Okay, welcome everyone to the OE Expo. For those of you just joining us for the first time today, and those of you who have seen some other sessions today, and also those who are joining us online, I'd like to remind you in person that today's sessions are being live cast online. Our next presentation is from the Enterprise Data Warehouse team. And they'll be presenting for about 25 minutes, and then if there's time to take questions here, and if not, they'll also be available in the lobby afterwards for another half an hour to take your questions. And without further delay, I'll introduce the Enterprise Data Warehouse team.
Hello, thank you all for being here and for everyone watching online. My name is Pamela Brown. I'm the Executive Director in the Office of Planning and Analysis, and I'm here with a couple members of our EDW team, Josh Blatt, who I get the pleasure of working with in my office, and Peter Kava, who is on our Enterprise Data Warehouse team. Josh is going to come up and talk about our IDMG initiative and how that fits into OE, and in particular, the investments that OE is providing us that are going to help us support a big decision support environment on the campus that we're really excited about. We have a tool called Cal Answers. It's going to provide us really great functionality. We just had that presentation about Cal Planning and how technology is going to be able to support our needs. This is going to be a really great tool. We already have some student data that's out there, and we're building a culture of evidence on the campus. We've got a group of power users and a group of folks that are using the dashboards that we have, so that we can go in and get access to information to help us answer the questions. And we get one question, we get one answer, we get the same one, and we can shift the focus of our discussions off of methodology of how you collected it from the system that you had to moving towards what does the data show us and what do we need to do to make the decisions that we have to make. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Josh Blatt, who's going to walk through the initiatives that we've got on, and then Peter and I will also be available for questions. Thanks.
Hi, again, my name is Josh Blatt. I'm Program Manager for Institutional Data and Analytics. I wanted to start with a story. There we go. This is a little success story of data, and it's related to the data warehouse projects that I'm going to talk about, and you'll see how in a second. But a few months ago, I was sitting in my office, and I heard down the hall someone say, "Woohoo, we changed the world today." So I went back to doing my work, didn't think too much of it. Then I heard it again. We changed the world today. And one more time. And at that point, I thought I had to find out what's going on. And I think we really did. Berkeley was the first public university to offer what we call the Middle Class Access Program. And it's financial aid to middle-income families. And in doing what's important to our story about this is when we started looking at this, the first reaction was that it couldn't be done. The numbers came in too high. We couldn't afford to do this. And it was only because of intuition and perseverance and some people working very hard on data for a long time that we found a way and discovered that we could do this. And as the proposals were going about, as they were going to cabinet level, there was a huge desire to have more data, to know that the data that they were working with was reliable. And I got told many times we needed this information in Cal Answers months ago. So that is one of the proposals, one of the projects that we're going to be starting to work on very soon. But the moral of the story that I wanted to say here is that we can do groundbreaking work. We can do amazing things if we have the data to support it. So the things that I want to talk about today are, first of all, just a general strategy. What was, Pamela mentioned IDMG, what is that? Why all these different data warehouse projects? And then I'll talk about the specific initiatives. Procure-to-pay reporting, the IDC Program Manager, data governance, student financials, and student curriculum. And then a little bit about how you can get ready for that and what it means. So, what's the problem that we're trying to solve here? In 2007, the university created an Institutional Data Management and Governance Task Force. This is before the initiative. It had broad backing and participation of leadership. Some of the people you've seen up here today were parts of that. Andrew Zeri was part of that. Shel Wagner was part of that. They did an online survey that had almost 400 responses that covered almost all business units. They did extensive in-depth interviews. They looked at peer institutions. And I'll quote here some of the conclusions from the report. We got poor grades overall for institutional data, including specifically access, usability, tools, and security. Now, there were variations in campus. There were people who felt well served. We already had bears, and the financial and HR information was in much better shape. Some of the other information, student information, the data that was reaching departments and deans was much less well covered. Productivity for staff was slowed in getting access and using the data. And leadership was not receiving data for sound priorities and policies. So that in a nutshell is what we're trying to solve. I dug into a couple of these. When we talk about what decision makers face, it's inadequate data to back up decisions, contradictory data. Pamela mentioned getting to one answer to one question, and that is a key goal. Because in the architecture we have right now, with different people looking at different data, you can ask 3 different people and get 3 different answers. And they can all be correct, given the data that they have, but it's not complete data. And we don't necessarily have clear definitions of what we're asking for, and that becomes a problem. So we're giving out different figures because we don't know what we mean. One of the surprising things in this study and inexperience with this stuff is how long it takes to get to good definitions of different institutional data elements. Another key thing I'd point out is in being able to make these decisions, part of what we need is the ability to monitor and know that our assumptions were correct and to be able to make corrections. And that's another key thing that's been missing for decision makers. When you get down to the level of the people who are providing data, you have another type of mess. You have data silos. People have talked about data islands. They've talked about architectural spaghetti. What you have is, for 40 years we've been building systems, and we think about reporting in those. We build in a few reports, we give a few people access, and we say, okay, we're ready to go. That person can provide access. But that person has one supervisor and one set of priorities, and when people from all over the university say, hey, can you help me, I need this data, you start to hear, grr, I can't. And they have a limited scope of what they can see. They see their system. And the way they store their data in their system is going to be different than how people store it in other systems that they need to match up to. And it creates a lot of difficulty. We have, as I said, fragmented views, no one's seeing the full picture, fragile interconnects. I was at lunch the other day and someone described getting data here as kind of like the old Soviet Union, where you're bribing people with goodwill and trading data in different ways. The tools that people use, there's lots of them, but they're not really set up specifically to use that data. So you can do a lot with access, but you're downloading data in various rudimentary ways and then setting up your tables for what you need. There's a lot of extra work that goes in that isn't really necessary. And another problem we have is insecure data because of this. So people are trading data around, they're sending it in email files, they're storing it on their local disks. And this isn't a theoretical problem. We've had areas that had really bad security breaches because the data was just sitting out there. And we can't all be experts in security to the extent that you really want with some of this data. So after this task force did their study, they came up with a set of recommendations. And I do want to read the goal. The goal is making institutional data easily accessible, reliable, consistent, and secure to support informed planning, decision-making, and communication by campus leaders. And that's what we've been striving for. There's 3 elements that are going to touch on the projects that we're talking about today. Data storage and sharing, shared tools, and data governance. One of the keys to solving all the issues that I've talked about is a comprehensive data warehouse. And there's this figure of a donut here. But in bringing all the different types of data together and having a solid core that links them together, we have something much more powerful than individual systems that you go to. You can start to integrate the data. And there's a lot of work that goes into making this stuff integratable, but once you get that, you can ask a whole set of questions that you couldn't ask before. You have one place to go where a lot of work has gone in to say, this is the authorized version of this data. These elements have been defined in a way that you can rely upon and speak to other people on campus and know what each other is talking about. The data is optimized for reporting, and because it's separate from the transactional systems, you can go to one place and get access to a bunch of things. So I'm not a buyer. I don't need to go into Berkeley. I don't need to be given access. I don't need to explain to anyone why I need that access. But I can go to CalAnswers and immediately have access to the procurement and payment data because it's in there. And we've said this is public information. You can go and see that. And you have to take that effect and multiply it 20 times with different subject areas to understand the benefits to having all this together. So Pamela talked about CalAnswers. CalAnswers it uses Oracle's BI tool. It's one of the top tools out there according to Gartner research, according to many studies. It has a lot of features that we like. You can get dashboards instead of just static reports, where the dashboards give you more context of different ways that you can look at the data and text to give you context. We have drill down, drill through, and the ability to do ad hoc querying and report development. So now let me get to the specific projects. Procure-to-pay reporting. Some of you may have been at the Berkeley presentation earlier today, where we talked about Berkeley is the new e-procurement tool, and this project is kind of a sister project to that, complementing that with giving the analytics that are actually really important to driving the savings that we're going to be getting through procurement. And the savings on that are projected, I believe, to be $90 million over 7 years. So this is really big impact. The analytics are about saving money. They're also about making processes run more smoothly, making sure things are approved, paid, having stronger relations with key vendors, ensuring regulatory controls, and reaching goals for vendor diversity. This started in July of 2011. It's a 2-year project. I can give you a timeline for the reporting end of this. The first thing we did was, as Berkeley went live, even for the pilot group, was to make sure that all the old BEARS reports were getting the same information, because the Berkeley information is going through the financial system, and that had to be compatible. So we hit that mark, and we're ready for the pilot group. Likewise, when cohort 1 went in, one of the key things Berkeley was trying to do is to say, let's get out of all of the work of approving low-cost invoices. And they created an auto-approval process. That's hitting almost half of the invoices that are going through and saving lots of effort. One of the keys to being able to do that was giving people the information they needed to know that those were going through okay, and that's what the auto-approval reports and dashboard is doing. It's a set of 6 reports that you can drill through, and that's the functionality that we got out first. There's a whole set of other reports that are going to be coming. Right now our timeline is to have the high priority reports I believe there's like a dozen of those. Numbers are probably not the way to go here, but a dozen of those that are scheduled to go out in mid-June, and then another set to go out in July. After we've gotten most of the reports out, then we'll be looking at open invoices and bringing in more detail on P-card transactions. This is just a slide to give you a sense of what the different reports are. I'm not going to go through all of them, but what I will say about the process, when we started during the summer, we started with something that Oracle gave us, which was a list of 250 reports, possible reports that have been developed in industry. And we whittled that down to ones that made sense for the university. We then spent time with focus groups and used those as kind of a basis to look at what could really work in the university and to talk about them. We actually ended up saying, we're not going to use almost any of these out of the box, but that gave us the basis to be talking about the reports that we have here and to say, okay, yes, this is a good starting point, and we're going to work forward from that. So that's what we've been working with so far. One of the key challenges in this whole project is that we've been working in parallel with Bearby, and that means that we were talking about processes and data that no one had ever seen, right? And we didn't have data to show them on these things. And what's more, the same people who we would ask about the data were the same people who were implementing Bearby. So that was a challenge. What's happened now is we do have data. We can really start looking at these reports and getting real feedback from people. So we'll be going back to talk to people in departments a lot more to get information on how this is starting to work for you and what we can really do with these. Other challenges is we're working with software as a service with SideQuest and integrating BFS and the Bearby data. So there's just a lot to do, but we were able to meet our deadlines to come in on time with the first report, and we foresee continuing to do that. A lot of the data that we need for those reports is now in the data warehouse. I have a few addresses up here. If you want information on the project, there is a project website that's there, and then there is support available, and you can call or email the help desk and suggest any enhancements too, because we are going to be looking at those very closely. Yipes. Okay, there we go. Next project I wanted to talk about is data governance and program management. This is near and dear to my heart because I am the sole person who was hired on this project in this way. There's several goals within this project. The first is to develop a governance process for data projects. That means aligning all the efforts that we have in the data warehouse to the most critical business needs and projects that have the most value, and having a mechanism that we're getting input from various areas over campus to make sure we're getting that right and that we're hearing about new projects. To that end, we've established an EDW coordinating committee that's gotten to work at looking at the different projects. They've already made recommendations on prioritization of what exists. We've got processes for taking in new projects and processes for looking at maintenance and infrastructure and all the other elements that contribute to a robust data warehouse. So data governance is one key part of that project. Support for the OE projects that I'm going to be talking about, including procure-to-pay and student finance and student curriculum, is another key part of that process. as you've seen, these projects all come out of a single need. There are several things that we can say that are common about them. And in doing program management, one of the things that I've been looking at is how can I support all these different projects? And we've looked at ways to consolidate training and support, standardized processes, and to serve as an interface between users and the EDW team and provide business analysis. There's coordination that goes between the projects. And the other key part of this project is working with the Institutional Data Council. So one of the recommendations that came out of the IDMG initiative is that we have a council that includes leadership. The IDC includes 12 people. They're mostly vice chancellors, associate vice chancellors. And they get together periodically to look at our overall strategy for data and to check in on how we're doing with this. And so part of this position is feeding data up to the IDC of what are the needs and what should the agenda and what should they be looking at. And part of it is following through on the initiatives that they discuss. This is just a graphic that gives you a sense of all the interfaces that we wanted for this data governance project. We've got the Institutional Data Council, Operational Excellence, of course, the IST EDW team, program management team, the BI analyst community, and departments that have needs that we're working with. So student financials. I touched on this in that initial story. What we want to do is bring together information about the costs of education, the financial aid that we're providing, and, well, accounts receivable and payroll, so we can make the best decisions possible regarding access to affordable education and financial planning. This is just going to be getting started in April, and we anticipate that late fall of 2012 we'll have the first deliverables from that, and completing in the spring of 2014. Some of the types of questions we want to be able to answer is, what's happening with the cost of education? How is it impacting students in their household? How will changes to budgets, class size and composition, federal funding, et cetera, affect us? How can we improve our financial aid offerings? How can we use that data in actionable ways? The sources for data will be financial aid, student accounts receivable, and student payroll, as we've seen so far. I also want to quickly talk about student curriculum. Now, this is something that hasn't been approved yet, but we're hopeful we're going to be able to commence this in the summer. It'll be bringing together information from a number of student systems, from about courses, instructors, enrollments, grades, requirements, and schedules. And some of the things that this will enable us to do is plan course offerings effectively, enhance advising, plan better for temporary academic staff and GSIs, make better use of learning spaces, and monitor the effectiveness of initiatives such as common good courses and support. It will also support a number of the initiatives that you heard from the student systems folks just a little while ago. So, one last set of thoughts about preparing for the future. What we're talking about is a new environment where we have data-driven decisions. And Cal Answers will be a great tool for doing this. Some of the skills that go into using this data, I've listed out here. Partly it's a matter of looking into these skills, partly it's a matter of seeing what's available, and partly it's a matter of allocating time and understanding where responsibilities in your department are to really use these effectively. Quantitative analysis, finding the measures that provide insight into our processes, is one of the key opportunities here. Using metrics and how you use those to manage your systems. Data presentation. We've done a lot of work on campus in providing information. There's been summer seminars, and there's going to be one again this summer where we talk about, we brought in Edward Tufte, who's an expert in the field 1 year, and those seminars are online. Anyway, data presentation skills can be very valuable with this. Learning the tools like Cal Answers, like Cal Planning, and understanding the data policies that govern how you can publish this data and what you can store, et cetera. Those are all things that can be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you for that presentation. The team will be available in the lobby for the next half an hour to answer questions you have. If you have to leave and have a question, please write it down on the survey form and turn it in at the back of the room, and we'll make sure we get your question answered. Thank you so much for joining us, and our next presentation will start in 5 minutes on IT governance.